For decades, we thought about fighting cancer as this direct, head-on war with tumor cells. But what if we've been trying to storm the front gates of a heavily armed fortress, when the real path to victory is somewhere else entirely?
Yeah, think about that for a second. It's a question that is totally flipping cancer research on its head. Today, we're going to explore a completely new strategy, not just attacking the enemy, but dismantling the very fortress it builds to protect itself.
All right, so to really get this new approach, we first have to understand the fortress. It turns out a tumor is way more than just a clump of rogue cells. It's a master architect. And that is the absolute key right there. It actively builds this shield. It is not a passive bystander. It is literally terraforming your body's tissue on a microscopic level, creating this customized sanctuary where it can thrive and, most importantly, resist our best treatments. And of course, scientists have a name for this fortress, the tumor microenvironment, or TME. I want you to think of it like a whole ecosystem. It's got its own unique climate, its own defenses, and it even corrupts the local guards, all for one single purpose: to protect the tumor inside at all costs. So what exactly are these defenses? How does it pull this off? Let's take a closer look at the specific ways this microenvironment shields the tumor from any kind of attack. And what's just wild is the sheer variety of defenses it uses. I mean, it does everything from building physical walls of stiff tissue to changing the very oxygen levels in the area. It is a multi-layered defense system. Let's break a couple of these down. So first up, the physical barrier. The tumor pumps out these signals that cause the tissue around it to become incredibly dense and stiff. It's like a medieval castle building thicker and thicker stone walls, making it almost impossible for chemotherapy drugs and our own immune cells to physically get inside and do their job. And then inside those walls, it changes the atmosphere. The tumor creates a low oxygen or hypoxic environment. Now, for most of our healthy cells, this would be a total crisis. But the tumor, it adapts. It actually learns to love these conditions, while many of our most powerful therapies, like radiation, need oxygen to be effective. The tumor basically builds itself a bunker where our best weapons are useless. Okay, so if a direct assault on this fortress is so incredibly difficult, what's the alternative? Well, this brings us to the new attack plan, which is much less about brute force and a whole lot more about clever sabotage. This comparison really just lays it all out, doesn't it? The old way was a direct assault. You charge the walls. The new idea is completely different. Don't attack the tumor, attack its environment. The whole idea is to tear down the walls, restore the oxygen, and dismantle its defenses before you even launch the main assault. And that is the whole game plan, right there. You're not trying to blow up the castle anymore. Instead, you disrupt its support system. You cut off its supply lines, you weaken its walls, and you turn that impenetrable fortress back into an open field, leaving the tumor totally exposed and vulnerable. Now, this all sounds pretty brilliant in theory, right? But what are the actual tools being used for this sabotage mission? Well, the answers are actually kind of surprising. So the first set of tools comes from this really clever strategy called repurposing. Researchers are taking existing, well-understood drugs that are approved for completely different conditions, and they're giving them a brand new mission: attack the tumor microenvironment. And here are some just incredible examples. So get this, losartan, a super common blood pressure medication. It turns out it can also reduce that stiff tissue we talked about. It literally softens the fortress walls. Or how about metformin, a diabetes drug? It's been shown to reduce that tumor hypoxia, letting oxygen back in and taking away the tumor's low oxygen shield. It's amazing. And it's not just prescription drugs either. The second part of this sabotage toolkit involves looking at widely available supplements and natural compounds to see if they can disrupt the TME. So, researchers are studying compounds many of us have heard of, like curcumin, which comes from turmeric, green tea extracts, even high-dose vitamin C. Now, the mechanisms are pretty complex, but the shared goal is really simple: just make the tumor's neighborhood a hostile place for it to live. So, as you can probably imagine, with all these potential drugs and supplements and targets, this whole new field can get incredibly complicated really fast. So, how do researchers even begin to organize all this information to make sense of it? I mean, that's the big logistical challenge, right? When you have dozens of potential sabotage agents, how do you possibly map out a coherent strategy for research and then, eventually, for treatment?
Well, some really interesting tools are emerging to do just that. The OncoIntegrate Protocol Builder, for instance, is a system that's designed to categorize and organize all these agents. Think of it like a strategic map for the researchers, letting them see clearly how different drugs and supplements might work together to weaken that fortress, and bringing some much-needed clarity to a very complicated battlefield.
And really, that is the perfect way to sum up this entire shift in thinking. The future of cancer therapy might rely just as much on strategy as it does on strength. It's about becoming master tacticians who understand the entire battlefield, the microenvironment, not just the enemy soldier in the middle of it. Which leaves us with a final, really fascinating thought. Instead of just destroying things, what if the future lies in rebuilding? In becoming master architects who can actually reshape the body's own environment, transforming it from a sanctuary for cancer into a place where it just can't survive.